Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo! I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another episode. On today's show, we're going to be discussing 5 big questions for the Lakers coming out of the All-Star break. At the All-Star break, the Lakers are 33-21, 5th in the West. They rank 11th in offense, 23rd in defense. 28 games remain for LA, the stretch run, if you will. So I want to go through 5 questions that I will be monitoring over this final third of the season. Before we get into it, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. I appreciate everybody who pulled up for the latest Buha's Block meetup for the All-Star game. We did it downtown, and it had been too long. It had been since, I think the last one was Summer League, technically, out in Vegas. So it was long overdue, and we'll have to do a couple more before the season wraps up. But appreciate everybody who voted on the location and everybody who showed up. We had a great time. But without further ado, let's get into the episode. Question number 1 for the Lakers is, will they get and stay healthy? I specify will instead of can because I think they can. I just think it's a low likelihood, a low probability that the Lakers are actually able to get healthy and stay healthy based on how this season has gone, based on how previous seasons have gone for the Lakers. They have just been snake bitten with the injury bug over the last few years, and that does give me some pause going into the playoffs with this group in terms of just their availability and health. I was curious to compare the Lakers to the rest of the West, at least the top teams in the West, the teams I view as West contenders. So I pull up this table here. I went through each of the top 6 teams in the West: OKC, San Antonio, Denver, Houston, the Lakers, and the Timberwolves. And I wanted to see, looking at each team's 10-man rotation, how many total games have they missed due to injury this season. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of great places to look online in terms of total games missed. There is no publicly available metric like that. There is on Spot Track money missed due to injury, so they calculate how much salary your team has missed due to injury. Lakers actually rank 20th in that, so they rank a bit lower. Wanted to just go through and calculated this by hand. And in terms of games missed due to injury this season, Minnesota is far and away the healthiest team. And that would make me a little nervous if I was a Timberwolves fan, that they're 6th right now in the West despite being so healthy, but they've only missed 55 games from their top 10 players. Then you go to Houston, who's missed 78 games. San Antonio has missed 88 games. Then you get a drop off to the Lakers at 113. So they are 4th out of these 6 teams. Then you get another drop off to Denver, who's missed 137 games, a lot of those with their starters. And then you get to OKC, who's missed 140 games. And it's basically been their entire rotation. One important caveat, though, if you look at the Lakers versus some of these other teams, is if you focus on the 3 best players on the team. So for the Lakers, of course, Luka, LeBron, and Austin. But for Denver, that's Jokic, Murray, and Gordon. And for OKC, that's Shea, J-Dub, Chet. The Lakers are on the high side in terms of games missed for their big 3. All 3 players have missed double-digit games. That is not the case for a lot of these teams. So the Lakers have been hit at the top of the roster. Now, again, you look at Denver, you look at OKC, they've missed more total games to the rotation, and they've missed a lot of games with their respective starters. So there's a split here where Minnesota, Houston, and San Antonio have been relatively healthy. So I think that gives you some room for optimism with the Lakers, right? Like that there is some room for growth here over the final third of the season. But, you know, if you want to push back on how injured the Lakers have actually been, you can say, hey, like, look at what Denver and OKC have done with missing even more games to their rotation. Now, both those teams, I think, are deeper than the Lakers. But overall, like the Lakers have been one of the more injured teams in the West among the contenders. And I think the biggest question, like nothing else really matters if this team can't get healthy. They've only had 10 games with their big three available. They are 7-3 in those games. A couple of those games, Luka left early one game, Austin left early one game. So we just have not been able to see what this group can look like fully healthy. We don't even know what the fully healthy starting group is going to look like. Like, I think it's going to be Marcus Smart finally as the fifth starter. But the fact that we don't even know that speaks to how injured the Lakers have been and just how much continuity and cohesion and familiarity they still don't have, despite their record and despite some of the success they've had this season. So that's going to be the biggest thing the rest of the way. You have Austin, who's been on a minutes restriction after missing over half the season with that calf injury. You have Luka, who just missed the last 4 games and was on a minutes restriction in the All-Star game. You have LeBron, who has dealt with several injuries late in the season and is still battling his sciatica. And that's to say nothing of any of the other guys. Like Marcus Smart has dealt with injuries for years. Vando, Jackson, DA, some of these guys have dealt with multiple injuries over the last few years. And so for the Lakers, can they get to the finish line intact? I think the top 7 are the guys like, pick your fifth starter and then whoever are the other 2 guys. So for example, let's just say Marcus is the 5th guy. I would say like Rui and Jake. I think the starters plus those 2, those guys have to be healthy. You could probably throw in Jackson, but then now we're getting basically through the entire rotation. Like, I think ideally for LA, the top 10 is healthy. So if we say Marcus is the 5th starter, you need the 5 starters, including the big 3, all healthy. Then off the bench, you need Rui and Luke for their shooting and spacing. You need Vando for his defense and rebounding and energy. You need Jake for his versatility and just the different things he could do on both sides of the ball. And you need Jackson, who's actually been arguably the Lakers' most reliable big man over the last month plus. So the Lakers need all 10 of those guys available. They can maybe get by with one of the bench guys not being available. But again, certainly the starters plus at least a couple of the key bench guys need to be healthy and available, and they need to get some reps together over the final 28 games. Question number 2 for me is, can the Lakers figure out how to optimize the big 3? And so related to the health, the big 3 is only played in 10 games together. The Lakers are 7-3 in those games. But despite that, they continue to lose the minutes with the big 3. And now we have a growing sample size here. So if you look at the lineup data this season, and this data is per Data Baller, an NBA Wowie, the big 3 on the floor this season, the Lakers have a minus 11.8 net rating. They've been outscored by nearly 12 points per 100 possessions in the 136 minutes those 3 have played together. But then you break it down into the 2-man lineup combinations here. And with the exception of the Austin-Luka pairing, which has been the Lakers' best pairing on the season, and those lineups have just crushed. But when you look at LeBron and Luka, minus 3.3, and that's a pretty big sample, nearly 500 minutes there. Then you also have LeBron and Austin, which has been typically a good duo going over the last few years. That's at minus 4 points per 100 possessions. And so 2 of the 3 2-man combinations between the big 3 have been negatives, and one of them's been crushing it with Austin and Luka. And that the fact that they're plus 20 over their 268 minutes together, and then the big 3 together are minus 11.8 in their 136 minutes together, that just shows you how great they've been in the minutes with LeBron off, right? Like the offsetting of that, of like they can, it drops that dramatically when LeBron is the 3rd guy there. I think a lot of that has had to do with the lineup combinations they put them in, right? Already mentioned it, but in the 80 or so minutes that the big 3 have played with DeAndre Ayton and Rui Hachimura, they've been crushed. They have a minus 20 net rating. So I think figuring out the best ways to deploy the big 3 together, I think it's likely going to be DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart as the rest of the starters. But beyond that, the different combinations to use in terms of them as duos, I think we have a growing sample size of LeBron and Luka have just not clicked. More so on the defensive side, you see this season they have a 1 20.7 defensive rating together, giving up 121 points per 100 possessions. That is way different than the Luka Austin pairing, which is giving up less than 108 points per 100 possessions. And then also LeBron and Austin, 122 points per 100 possessions. So they've just not been able to figure that out in terms of how those guys click together. But I think it's got to start with honestly reducing the big 3 minutes. Like, they're going to play to start games. They're going to play to close halves and to close games. But outside of that, I think playing those three as few minutes together as possible. It's counterintuitive because I am talking about, on the one hand, they need to get healthy. They need to get reps. They need to get continuity. They need to get cohesion, familiarity, all that stuff. And that is true. But I think we have enough of a sample size here with these three that there is a limitation. There is a ceiling to those three playing together. So you're going to have to start games like that politically. You're not benching LeBron. You're not benching Austin. That's just not going to happen. But if you play those guys, 4 to 5 minutes to start the game, 4 to 5 minutes to start the third quarter, and then 3 to 4 minutes to close the first half, and 5 to 6 minutes to close games, you are going to have, let's just say, 16 to 20 minutes every night that they're on the floor. And you do need to perform better in those minutes. And I think with a larger sample size, they will be better also with better lineups. But I think you do need to reduce those minutes and keep that closer to like maybe the 16-minute side, compared to 20, 22, 24, etc. But I think a key is also going to be staggering LeBron and Luka and keeping those two guys separate. Now, in terms of individual, like when each player is on the floor by themselves, you look at Luka's plus 4.4, LeBron's plus 9.4, and Austin is minus 0.7. So the LeBron only lineups have thrived. And you also see the Luka Austin lineups have thrived. So I think there's a clear separation here in terms of LeBron by himself with some of those bigger lineups that get out in transition, play zone, play smash mouth basketball, and some of the LeBron-led bench groups, and then having some Luka Austin-led bench groups. And if you have to go with another like star only, I think you go Luka only, not Austin only, but those groups have crushed it on both sides of the ball with Austin and Luka. You see here 128 offensive rating with those guys, 108 defensive rating. Those are both elite marks. 128 offensive rating would be the best of all time by a wide margin. 108 defensive rating would be second best in the NBA behind only OKC. So I think the key takeaways here for me are like reducing the big three's minutes. You're not going to entirely eliminate it because, again, politically, it's just not tenable. And those guys are too good and too important and need to play too much to eliminate the big three ever playing together or even get it to like 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. Like they're going to play at least 15, 16 minutes a night together. And maybe on some nights, if depending on the opponent, that's into the 20s. But I think you reduce those minutes. Then when you get into the bench groups, I think you keep it more LeBron-led bench groups and then Austin and Luka-led bench groups. I also think, as like a secondary thing to factor in here, the LeBron, Luka, Rui groups have really struggled, so I think you need to keep those separate. I like Rui more with Luka than I do with LeBron. I think there's a lot of overlap with LeBron and Rui. And then also the Luka LeBron DA lineups have tended to struggle this season. So I know DA is going to start, at least for the time being. I don't see that changing, but I do like staggering that a little bit, maybe bringing in Jackson a little bit earlier. And DA can play with LeBron in some of those bench groups. Jackson tends to play with Luka as the lob threat in some of those bench groups. But I think there's some clear pairings and partnerships that have fared better and some that have fared worse. Like, for example, Luka's played better with Marcus, but he's played worse with Jared Vanderbilt. LeBron has played well with both, but I think LeBron unlocks Vando in a way that Luka and Vando have just not been able to click. So I think there's some clear things here, but with the LeBron groups, lean into the size, lean into zone and transition. And with the Luka groups, lean into the offensive end. Luka, we have yet to see Luka and Kennard play together, but Luka and Kennard, Luka and Rui, and some of those groups just really killing teams with the pick and roll attack and also with the spacing. And final thing on this is the lineup data from the 2024-25 regular season, the 2025 postseason, and this season. So this is all the available lineup data with the big three together. You look at nearly 700 minutes together, minus 3.5 net rating. The 119 offensive rating is elite. That is a great number, but the 122 defensive rating is atrocious. They cannot defend anybody with those three together on the floor. Then you also look at the LeBron-Luka pairing, minus 1.7. They've been about average offensively, 116.5 offensive rating, and bad defensively, 118.2 defensive rating. Luka and Austin have crushed it, plus 20 net rating, 126 offensive rating, 106. Somehow these two defend great together when they're not with LeBron. It's an unenviable task for JJ and the coaching staff, but this is going to be a key thing. It's like they got to get healthy and stay healthy and get those reps. And then they also have to figure out the optimal lineups and rotation around the big three, and also ways to get the big three going together so they are not losing those minutes as consistently. Question number 3 is, how sustainable is the Lakers' recent defensive improvement? So beginning on January 28th, that was that Toronto game. That was a turning point in the Lakers season from a defensive perspective, or it at least appears to be. We will see if they can maintain this over the final 28 games. But overall, looking at the big picture of the season, the Lakers have played the 7th most zone in the NBA. About 7% of their defensive possessions are zone possessions, and they rank 7th in points per possession allowed in zone. So they've been a really good zone defense. Contrast that with their man defense, and they are 25th in man defense in terms of points allowed per 100 possessions. This data is via Synergy. So you look at it, and Stan Van Gundy had one of the quotes of the season about the Lakers, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was basically like, watching the Lakers play man, you understand why they have to play so much zone. And the Lakers are just a terrible man defense. And that is aside from the health and them just potentially never getting healthy, the biggest concern with this group far and away is the defensive end. I think that the big three and their struggles together get to the heart of that. But in general, most of the Lakers, like if we're looking at the Lakers 10-man rotation, you could argue 3 of their players are above average defenders, maybe 4 if we're being generous. And you compare that to OKC, where I would say like 9 of their 10 rotation guys are above average defenders, or even looking at Denver and like their top 7, top 8, like these teams across the West have far more defensive talent, defensive firepower, and defensive depth. And that's where the Lakers are far behind the rest of the West, at least from a contention standpoint. But since January 18th, the Lakers have been playing nearly 18% of their possessions in zone, which is a league leading mark. It's nearly double the Milwaukee Bucks, who currently lead the league with 10% of their possessions in zone. And over that span, the Lakers are 13th in defensive rating. And comparing that to the overall season, they're 23rd in defensive ratings. And so we've seen a real uptick here. That's a 14-game sample size, almost a quarter of the season in terms of like how much the Lakers have played up to this point. They've been an above average defense. I think they found something here with this 2-3 zone, and also changing things up and switching into a man with 8 seconds left on the shot clock, 6 seconds left on the shot clock to disrupt the rhythm of the offense. And it's allowed them to also play bigger. We've seen some of these lineups where Vando or Rui is technically the 2 on paper in a lineup. A lot of those LeBron-led bench groups that start the second quarter, start the fourth quarter, those groups have been great. And the Lakers leading into zone, like there's been some rough moments, and I think the best passing and shooting teams are going to slice and dice that zone. And we saw like they tried doing it against Denver, they tried doing it against the Clippers, and those teams had success against them. But I think looking at like some of the teams they might play, against a Minnesota, against a Houston, I think those are a couple teams they could probably get away with the zone defense against. OKC, they did it a little bit to some success. I have more skepticism with that when Shea is back. And then Denver, I don't think you could do that against Jokic and Murray. And San Antonio, I think their guards are too quick, too athletic, although you could test their shooting. So maybe San Antonio, but I think it can be a weapon for the Lakers over the final 28 games. And I doubt, they played some easier games recently, and that has carried some of this defensive success, some of the defensive rating and where they've been. But if they can, I believe they have the 8th toughest remaining schedule. If they can tread water around like league average and maybe be somewhere between 14 to 17 in defensive rating, and amp it up offensively and get healthy and actualize their offensive potential as a top 5, if not top 3 offense, that's the sweet spot where I think this group can potentially ascend to like the number 3 or number 4 seed in the standings, and then also enter the playoffs with some momentum. But I think it's got to start with, like, they got to get healthy. I ordered these in order of importance, in my opinion. They got to get healthy. They got to figure out the big 3, and then they also have to improve defensively. But we've seen some strides over the last 14 games. How sustainable is it? Remains to be seen. How sustainable is it into the playoffs, right? We saw some gimmicky stuff from JJ, some opponent-specific stuff last regular season. They had the 24-game stretch where they went 20-4, league's best defense. That did not translate after that stretch where LeBron got hurt, and it certainly did not translate into the playoffs against Minnesota. So there's also the element of not only can they sustain this for the rest of the regular season, but can they sustain this into a playoff series? And after game 1 or game 2, if the opponent comes with a counter or two, like how do they adjust within that? And because at the end of the day, like, you cannot play zone for a full game. Your man-to-man defense is going to need to carry you to some degree, and the Lakers need their man-to-man defense to be better than 25th in points per possession, allowed. So they got to get that to like closer to 15th, 17th. So they have to make strides in that. But of course, right now, I think the zone defense, some of the more aggressive principles, the trapping, the blitzing, we saw that against Denver. We saw that against the Clippers. We haven't seen that as much lately, but I would like to see JJ continue to get more creative. And if we can see this group be closer to a league average defense for a longer stretch here, that would give me more confidence going into the playoffs and their, because the offense I've less concerned with. I think it will rebound and end up being closer to like a top 5, top 7 offense. But if they are a bottom 8 defense, as they've been up to this point in the season, they're losing in round 1. They do not have a chance to win a playoff series with that level of defense. They have to be better. They've been better lately, but we'll see if they can sustain it. Question number 4 for the Lakers is, will their shooting eventually stabilize? And what I mean by this is, I think these are the primary shooters, the primary perimeter players in the Lakers rotation. I did not include DeAndre Ayton, Jackson Hayes, or Jared Vanderbilt. If you look at each player's catch and shoot 3-point percentage this season compared to the past 3 seasons. And in the case of Marcus Smart, I actually included 4 seasons just because he only played 56 games the past couple of years. So I went back an extra season for Marcus. But looking at how these guys rate this season compared to a few seasons, and I just wanted to have a little bit of a larger sample size to compare it against, you see like Luka is shooting 2.6% worse on catch and shoot threes this season compared to the past 3 seasons. LeBron is shooting 7.1% worse. That's a notable number. That's significant. Jake LaRavia, 6.1%. Marcus Smart, 2%. So those 4 guys in particular, I think, have all underperformed on their threes this season and should, in theory, regress to the mean in a positive sense, progress to the mean for those who are on me about the usage, even though regression technically is not positive or negative in this context. But regress or progress to the mean, like these guys should be shooting the ball better over the final 28 games into the playoffs. And now look, sometimes guys have an off season and they never regress. They never get back to their norms, but we have enough of a sample size with some of these guys where Marcus is closer to a league average catch and shoot guy. Jake has been an above average catch and shoot guy for his career. LeBron has been elite over the past few seasons and just has not had it this year. And then Luka has also been above league average. But then we can look at the flip side though, and you have 3 guys who are shooting above their averages over the past few seasons. So Austin's at nearly 41% this year, where he's been more of a 39% guy over the past few seasons. So maybe that drops off a little bit. Then you have Rui and Luke, who are both shooting. Rui's at 5.3% above. Luke is at 3.1% above. Now, I could see Luke maybe dropping off a little bit because 53% on catch and shoot threes is an insane percentage. With Rui, I actually think this is relatively sustainable just because Rui's percentage is dragged down by 3 years ago when he shot 30% on catch and shoot threes. But over the past 2 seasons, he has been above 40%. So I think him being in that 40 to 42, 40 to 43% is realistic and sustainable. So Rui, I'm not as concerned with him dropping off. I could see Luke dropping off a little bit just because 53 is such a high percentage. And then Austin, I think is kind of in line with who he's been, but maybe that decreases a little bit. But if you look at the green here versus the red, for those who are listening, I have a chart up with just comparing the shooting this year versus the past 3 years and the difference. Like, there's more red than green on this. So I think several Lakers players are due to shoot the ball better. Didn't make a chart for pull-up three-point percentage, but if we also look at pull-up three-point percentage, Luka this year is shooting 34.2%. He's been at 36.2% over the previous 3 seasons, so Luka is due for some regression there. Austin's been at 33.6% this year, typically shooting 36.3% over the past few seasons, and then LeBron is at 29.6%. And has been at 32.5 the past 3 seasons. And so the big three are all between 2 to 3% worse on pull-up threes this season compared to their averages. So maybe the Lakers collectively are just having a terrible shooting season, and this is not going to change. But I think with several of these guys, they should shoot better over the final 28 games, and we'll see some regression there. On the season, the Lakers are 20th in three-point percentage. They are 23rd in makes and 24th in attempts. So they've been a bottom 10 three-point shooting team this season by any metric. I think they need that to get to closer to league average to really hit their ceiling on the offensive end. They could also do a better job of getting Rui and Luke, and I would say even Austin, involved as catch and shoot guys. But I think the Lakers are due for some positive regression with their shooters. And I think that's another thing to be potentially encouraged by. But again, there's no guarantee that happens. And so we'll have to see, can some of these guys actually shoot the ball better, shoot it more in. We're not asking for them to be 40, 42, 44% catch and shoot guys. It's, can you be 35, 36, 37%? And I think several of these guys are candidates to shoot like that over the rest of the season. And then final big question here, and this one is less analytical, less quantifiable, but who fits around Luka long term? And a lot of the discussion, really even going back to the offseason, but throughout the season, has been this 2026 plan and next season and the future and building around Luka and Mark Walter purchasing the team and the changes they're going to make to basketball ops and scouting and all that. And so I lay all that out because the Lakers are clearly thinking about the future and this summer and how they're going to build around Luka and Austin, and which players fit best. So I've made this point before. I made it before the season. I made it during the season. But this season, in many ways, is a tryout, is a trial period for which players fit around Luka and Austin and which players don't. And I think the interesting thing is a lot of these guys fit in a specific role, and depending on the context of the rest of the roster, I think it just depends on what type of roster the Lakers want to build. And if we go through some of these guys, right, like DeAndre Ayton, I think fits more as a backup than a starter. I think we have a growing sample size of that. I think Jackson fits as a backup. I think LeBron, it just comes down to can the Lakers figure out the best way to fit the big three together? And then also what type of contract he's going to be potentially on next season if he continues playing, if he wants to continue playing in LA, if the Lakers want to make him a competitive offer. And then you have Rui, who I like as a key bench player on a Luka Austin team. I think if you're going to start him, you need elite defenders at the 5 and the 3. And I don't think the Lakers, as constructed, have that makeup. Maybe they could have that makeup after the summer and it's a different conversation. But as constructed, I think Rui makes more sense as like a 6th or 7th man on a Luka and Austin team. Then you have Jake LaRavia, Marcus Smart, who I both like off the bench in a certain role. Same thing with Jared Vanderbilt. So like each of these guys has a case to be a part of the Lakers' future in a specific role. It's going to come down to what the rest of the group looks like, what the Lakers have to give up to shape the roster in a certain way, to add a starting level center that fits with Luka, to add a couple of 3-and-D wings that are starting level guys, to add more depth to the bench and the back end of the roster. But these final 28 games plus the playoffs, this is going to be an audition. Guys' future is going to be on the line here. And everything has to be about how do you complement Luka? How do you fit next to Luka? Do you have a certain motor? Do you have a certain physicality? Do you have a certain baseline or floor defensively? Like, I think these are can you shoot, right? Like Luke Kennard fits a role as a bench shooter. So I think most of the group, honestly, outside of the big three, is like bench level guys and should be more in a bench role moving forward. And that's the challenge for Rob Pelinka in the front office this summer, is trying to build out, keep some of these guys in bench roles and then revamp the starting group. But I think these final 28 games plus the playoffs are going to be all about who fits with Luka, who fits with Austin, who fits with both of them, and in what context and manner. But that will do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back later in the week. I will talk to you then.